tobacco trails, tobacco campuses, discounts on moist snuff, possibly psychotic minor league baseball mascots, but also bonkers housing construction and a ton of positive energy around fighting for a more walkable, more bikeable community. The city that strongly encourages you to roll your own. Get ready for City Visit Durham, North Carolina edition coming up next. This is CityNerd, weekly content on cities and transportation, and due to my possibly overambitious trip planning, you get a second North Carolina video, but this one's about a city that has a very different energy to it. Let's back up for a sec. Previously on this channel, I left off at the Greensboro train station in North Carolina's Triad, where I was waiting for the Piedmont to Durham in North Carolina's Triangle. Two very different constellations of cities, and as someone who grew up way in the remote upper left part of this country, I can never get over this. Those two constellations are just an hour apart by a low-speed rail. If you remember from a couple weeks ago, the Greensboro Amtrak station is just stunningly beautiful, in this YouTuber's opinion, particularly for a city that size. The Durham Amtrak station, pretty cool, but not actually built as a passenger depot. Like a lot of the older buildings in Durham, it's a former tobacco warehouse that was gutted and renovated into a train station in 2009, and now serves 4 Piedmonts and 1 Carolinian in each direction 7 days a week. Durham's Amtrak station is super well located, right at the doorstep of downtown, which you can see is growing vertically, although some of the vertical growth maybe isn't optimal. The Parking Reform Network mandates map says the city of Durham eliminated parking mandates for all land uses citywide in late 2023, so it's probably a good guess that this particular development was permitted a little too soon. Anyway, downtown Durham is very compact and walkable and pretty vibrant. Great bookstore, which is a must. Gluten-free fried catfish and yuca fries, just insane if you have an unfortunately funky diet like I have. Slushies and board games? I'm in. And I won't spend too much time here now, but we'll look at lots of inner Durham neighborhoods and come back to downtown later in the video. So we're gonna head west from downtown, and I'll leave you in a bit of suspense as to the destination. But on the way, let's pay our respects to the historic West End neighborhood. Definitely worth lingering for a bit if you visit. Okay, we've arrived. Duke University, possibly the most universally reviled institution if you're a college basketball fan who lives anywhere but Durham, and sadly, probably reviled even if you do live in Durham and you're a fan of good transit service. The university is an absolute heavyweight in local politics, and when people found out I was making a Durham video, I got lots of messages to the effect of, "You, CityNerd, must talk about how Duke University, with significant backing from the Koch brothers, torpedoed a light rail line on which the region had already spent $130 million on planning and design." Well, rule 1 of this channel is nobody tells me what to do. So if you think I'm going to mention that Duke University, with significant backing from the Koch brothers, torpedoed a light rail line on which the region had already spent $130 million on planning and design, and that this is basically a page ripped from the conservative playbook on how to sabotage blue cities, you're going to be sorely disappointed. I honestly don't have a lot to say about the university itself, other than I do appreciate there's a little bit of striping leading up to the storm drain. Every city should do stuff like this. The Duke Gardens, on the other hand, I have plenty of nice things to say about. A little closer into downtown than the main campus, the gardens are open and free to the general public 365 days a year, funded by the university itself and charitable contributions. And you'll be pleased to hear I got here just in time for National Pollinator Week. Anyway, if you're into the idea of having what's kind of an oasis close into the center of your city, Durham has you covered. It's got an arboretum, super interesting plant species, koi ponds, and other water features. Really just a serene and beautiful place to take a walk and be alone with your thoughts. Just don't get out of line because security personnel are on site and keeping a close eye on you. Before we leave the area west of downtown, let's ride up into the Old West Durham neighborhood. You'll start seeing more residential density here, and some of this has that old industrial feel to it. These rail overpass structures are seemingly everywhere, and this was true in Winston-Salem too. This is 9th Street, which I think is about as close an approximation as Durham has to a college student-oriented commercial Main Street. Don't act like you don't know what I mean. Dippin' Dots, ramen joints, hot pot, pasta and wings, quality haircuts, shops that sell mind-altering chemicals. No moist snuff deals though, you need a gas station mini mart a few blocks away for that. Let's move south of downtown proper. Did you really think we were going to get all the way through this video without some kind of adaptive reuse of historic tobacco infrastructure? People, this is North Carolina. Welcome to the American Tobacco Campus, built on the remains of the American Tobacco Company, which was founded by, guess who, the Duke family. I don't have a lot to say about this one. It's kind of like the Innovation Quarter in Winston-Salem. Restaurants, office space, creative space. The grounds are, I think, kind of picturesque. And there's housing here too, advertising city living in proximity to Bulls games, and we're gonna have to talk about that. Okay, and I'm not confident this is the #1 tourist attraction in all of Durham, North Carolina, but it has to be up there. You might have picked up on this in the Winston-Salem video, but I really love going to minor league baseball games. There aren't any bad seats, the product is good, the price is great, the vibes are impeccable, and Durham does it better than just about anywhere else. This is Durham Bulls Athletic Park, amazingly a minor league baseball stadium that didn't sell its naming rights. I don't know that you even have to be a fan of baseball to enjoy coming here, or that you even have to be a fan of the best baseball movie of all time, and there isn't even a close second in my opinion. Argue with me down in the comments if you must. Bonus points for having a thematically appropriate bike rack out front. Negative points for whatever this mascot is, if for no other reason than because the dance moves are just a little too spicy for my taste. Totally redeemed by Wooly the Bull though. Just a very cool ballpark, hemmed in all the way around by a very recognizably urban environment. It's just proper baseball, and the experience is definitely recommended. Durham Bulls, you can just Venmo me my sponsorship fee. Thanks. The ballpark and the attached sort of mini sports entertainment district are also part of the American Tobacco Campus. I love the collage outside this sports bar that celebrates the college basketball legacy of the state of North Carolina. The legendary Christian Laettner buzzer beater that lifted Duke against Kentucky, David Skywalker Thompson from NC State, the big fundamental out of Wake Forest, and of course, the GOAT, Tar Heel legend, Raymond Felton. Okay, you might have thought we were done with legacy tobacco infrastructure, but you were wrong. At the south end of the American Tobacco Campus, across the Route 147 freeway, is the northern terminus of the American Tobacco Trail, a rails-to-trails project on the abandoned right-of-way of what was a line built as part of the tobacco company's operation. So you can lament that it hasn't been repurposed as part of a regional rail line of some sort, but a solid passenger rail connection between Raleigh and Durham already exists, so I don't know how much utility that would really have. But it does have all the features that make a rail-to-trail project great, which I'll talk more about in a minute. I do want to point out that the American Tobacco Trail is part of the East Coast Greenway, Maine to Florida, but I wouldn't want to suggest that there's a facility of this quality running from like Acadia National Park to Key West. Although if there is, I know what I'm doing next summer. Personal note, when you grow up in the West Coast, your experience or perception of the East Coast is often the big cities in the Northeast and then maybe Florida at some point. And unless you're going to school there, or you have relatives there, or you have business that takes you there, your perception of the Mid-Atlantic or the Southeast is very hazy. I'd never been to North Carolina until last year, and I consider myself a reasonably well-traveled person. And I have to say, I have really enjoyed every single day I spent in this state. Back to the trail itself, you'll notice all the tree coverage. North Carolina in general has an amazing canopy, and you'll definitely notice that if you fly into any of the airports. And that's important because it does get crazy humid here, and you'll take any relief you can get. So let's talk about some of the benefits of building a trail along a rail alignment. First of all, it's going to be flat, which is always a plus. I mean, I don't know anyone who goes out to walk their dog or go for a bike ride who thinks, man, I sure hope there are lots of rapid elevation changes. But the other thing is grade separation. The Tobacco Trail includes a lot of structures that were originally built for the rail alignment, and some new structures too, not just for crossing waterways, but also some roadways, so you don't get delayed or get exposed to dangerous conflicts. The overcrossing at Interstate 40, about 8 miles south of downtown Durham, is newer, and yeah, people will put padlocks on basically any bridge these days. It's just madness. Now, the trail isn't completely grade separated, but basically every at-grade crossing has a safe, comfortable crossing of some kind. You do come in contact with a couple of stroads, and I haven't researched to find out if there's something in the capital plan for filling this gap at Fayetteville and Barbie, but this is by far the most unpleasant location I encountered on my ride. But it is just one location on the 10-odd mile segment I rode, so 99% of it is fantastic. And the variety of trail users I encountered was kind of a testament to how good a facility it is. Lots of people walking, running, biking, entire pelotons of Lycra people, sure, but also people walking babies, people walking dogs, people attempting to walk their dogs, but their dogs just aren't having it. Overall, though, pretty good vibes. But this is a channel about transportation, and it is immoral to bike just for the fun of it. You absolutely have to have a destination, that's non-negotiable, and the destination in this case was the streets at Southpoint. Yes, finally, an authentic walkable urban environment with a literal main street and every modern urban amenity you could possibly wish for. Authentic Italian cuisine, glorified sweatpants. Look, I'm not trying to be disingenuous. I understand why people come to places like this. It's kind of like urbanism, except they no trespass the poor and unhoused people, and probably more important, the parking is abundant and free. My thought on this is places like downtown Durham, which is an actual downtown, are very convenient to visit and spend time in if you actually live there. Probably less so if you have to drive there and park. So we should make it feasible for more people to live in those places so they don't have to drive to a place like the streets at Southpoint or maybe even own a car at all. It's just about choices. For the people whose criteria for what constitutes good urbanism is just whether there's a Maggiano's Little Italy and ample unpriced vehicle storage, they can all still come here. But we need to be building more housing for people who want something better. So let's leave the streets at Southpoint and head back north into the heart of Durham so we can talk about what's happening in the city now to make all of that possible. Before that though, a customary reminder to click on all the things, hit the notification bell if it isn't already hardwired into your brain that I release my content at noon Eastern every Wednesday. Connect on the apps and sign up for the Patreon if you're feeling generous, although this week I would really encourage you to direct your generosity toward local advocacy groups. Because while I was in Durham, I did an event for Bike Durham, a local advocacy group that works on bike stuff. It included a group ride beforehand to tour some of the neighborhoods I already showed you, and some neighborhoods still to come. The bike culture in Durham is pretty solid, and it should be for what is kind of a college town. I'm not going to include a critique of the various infrastructure elements of the city's bike network. I covered the American Tobacco Trail, and the group ride did hit other segments of the off-street path system. What we're looking at now is the South Ellerby Creek Trail. Central Durham is mostly a well-connected grid, so there are lots of quiet streets you can get east-west or north-south on. But we also did a little takeover of 9th Street. Did not include a Dippin' Dots side quest, sadly. But 9th is basically a Shero situation, not ideal unless you impose your numbers on it, which is what we also did downtown, where most of the streets are relatively narrow and calm, kind of inherent to the narrow right-of-ways you get in a North Carolina city of this vintage. You saw the same thing in Winston-Salem if you watched that video a couple weeks ago. Even some really narrow rights of way that have a Woonerfy feel to them. There really is so much to like here, but our destination was full steam, a brewery with a good size event space. Great turnout, and I really do these events to help grow the profile of the local organizations like Bike Durham that are out there doing the hard work, and also just to bring lots of people together who care about the same things I care about. It's really a win-win. It's a lot of wins, honestly, and we all have a good time. Anyway, if you're someone who lives in Durham or you just care about the city and think advocating for better, safer, more sustainable travel options is good, consider becoming a member or otherwise supporting. I'll leave a link down in the description. Okay, this event was in the north end of downtown Durham, which is really where all the action is happening, for better or worse, and I do think it's mostly better. Like I mentioned earlier, there are so many reasons why we should be enabling more housing supply in our central areas, and all the better if it's a city like Durham that has eliminated parking mandates. Apartment buildings that don't sit on top of 8 stories of structured parking? Just such an innovative concept. The area is a hotbed of restaurants, coffee places, and nightlife, and there better be an axe-throwing bar or I want no part of it. All of this is within what the city calls the Bullpen Social District, which apparently means you can just walk around in public with an adult beverage. Greensboro had a similar situation along South Elm Street. Does the state of North Carolina have some kind of enabling legislation for this kind of thing? Because I don't necessarily run into it anywhere else. Maybe the Vegas Strip? Anyway, if you have intel, let me know down in the comments. And why is it the Bullpen district, you might ask? Well, besides the city of Durham being a bit synonymous with minor league baseball, North Downtown is also the location of Durham Athletic Park, the longtime home ballpark of the Durham Bulls, and where a lot of the principal photography for the film Bull Durham happened. The ballpark still gets used for baseball and softball tournaments, summer collegiate leagues, concerts, community events, and the skyline continues to evolve around it. So the mix around this district is super interesting and kind of encapsulates a lot of the tension at play in densifying cities more broadly. It is enjoyable to make fun of NIMBYs, I would never argue otherwise, but I actually think there is a substantive discussion to be had about how much you can change a place before it just isn't that place anymore, and how important that even is. As an outsider, I feel like the overall direction is positive, but I'd be willing to hear out other perspectives. So Durham was great, and I was kind of sad to have my visit come to an end. Really quick, an information-dense coda for you intrepid car-free travelers. Despite the lack of rail transit, thanks Koch brothers, the connection to the airport is actually pretty slick. The entire system is fareless right now, so you can hop on a bus at Durham Transportation Center right across the tracks from the Amtrak station, take it to the Regional Transit Center in the middle of Research Triangle Park, halfway between Raleigh and Durham, and there's a timed connection with like a 5-minute wait to get the bus to RDU Airport. All told, about 40 minutes, so super convenient if you're staying in downtown Durham, and why wouldn't you? And that's all I've got. Thanks for joining today, and thanks as always to the patrons who not only help keep this operation afloat financially, but a lot of the contacts I make to set up these events I had in both Winston-Salem and Durham come via conversations I have on my Patreon. I realized the city of Raleigh was kind of a massive omission from this whole expedition, and I do intend to rectify that in the future. Anyway, keep the great topic suggestions and travel itineraries coming. I'll be back with a new episode next week, and I'll see you then.